Okay, so good morning to all. Welcome to our university. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Our panel on transnational mobility in the national and international contexts addresses a wide range of topics, too much difference. But all of high interest and relevance. We have 4 presentations. I don't know, we have maybe 3. So we will certainly have some minutes in the end to discuss the 3 topics or the 4 topics. I will now give the floor to our first speaker. I'm sorry for my spelling, but this is a co-authored analysis by Ayca Arkilic, this, and Ebru Turhan. Ayca comes from Victoria University of Wellington and Ebru from Turkish-German University. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for this kind presentation. I come all the way from New Zealand, so it's really nice to be here. And this is a new project that's not completed yet, so it's the first time we are presenting. So I would really appreciate your criticisms, suggestions, questions. This.
You have to share.
Oh, share. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
So this project is about increasing rate of visa rejections affecting Turkish scholars and what this means for epistemic injustice and global knowledge production. So my co-author couldn't come here today. Just to give you a bit of context, Turkish academics and students are experiencing increased visa rejections from the so-called global north in embassies, mainly EU countries and North American countries like the US and Canada. 2 years ago, the highest number of Schengen visa rejections was directed at Turkish citizens. And between 2014 and 23, the rate of visa rejections almost quadrupled from almost 4% to 16%. As you all know, visa applications are extremely costly. Sometimes applicants need to travel to major cities. It's emotionally, financially really difficult. But we see this new trend of unjust visa rejections to the point that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan described this as political blackmail, arguing that it's not just about incomplete documents, but it's actually a political position from especially the EU countries. For example, Belgium refuses every 3rd applicant from Turkey, and Germany's rejection rate is around 21%, but Greece and France also reject very often. In recent months, Italy announced visa applications from Turkish citizens will not be accepted under any circumstances for 3-year undergraduate, graduate, and Erasmus exchange students. And Turkish students took the Italian consulate in Istanbul to court. And some Italian parliamentarians argued that this really violates the values of Europe and Italy, and this is really unfair. Just a couple of days ago, Germany ended visa rejection appeals by Turkish citizens, meaning if a Turkish citizen gets visa rejection, there's no way to appeal and ask why they got a rejection. So this is really very concerning. Beyond the Schengen zone, US is doing something similar. For example, we see visa delays, visa applications appointments are scheduled for months in advance. Rejection rate for Turkish visa applications from the US and EU combined exceeded 70%. Normally, visa rejections happen because of insufficient funds, invalid passport, criminal history, no intention to return home, or incorrect information. But in the case of Turkish citizens, rejections happen even though applicants meet all the right conditions. So there's no reason to reject. So this is really, really concerning and creates lots of problems for Turkish scholars, which is the main focus group of this project. When we look at existing studies, we see that some scholars wrote about migration restrictive migration regimes or restrictions on academic mobility, but visa rejection is still understudied in scholarship, especially the implications of visa rejection in terms of epistemic injustice and global knowledge production affecting Turkish scholars. So the existing literature fails to provide comprehensive analysis of the varying levels of visa challenges faced by so-called non-Western scholars. As I mentioned, a broad range of mobility barriers, such as differential visa schemes, lengthy procedures, financial costs, delays, have been explored, but we still do not much about visa rejections, which is the most significant obstacle for Turkish scholars' mobility these days. So in addition to epistemic injustice, this also has implications for scholarship on decentering in international relations, and I will define these two concepts in a minute. So this creates knowledge hierarchies and epistemic injustice. So our research question is, what are the implications of the rising trend of visa rejections faced by Turkish political science and international scholars and students? And what kind of resistance strategies do Turkish scholars employ to challenge these barriers and injustice? To define epistemic injustice, so it basically means knowledge injustice. So it has to do with, for example, travel costs, registration costs, discriminatory migration policies, how this selective marginalization of epistemic or intellectual authority of non-global North scholarship, how it constrains academic pluralism, and how scholars of global North often do not know what scholars of non-global North are going through because they never had to deal with visa applications, visa rejections. So it creates a gap between this one group and another in terms of knowledge production and, of course, intellectual authority. Epistemic decentering has to do with how only few places, mainly the ones in Europe, have been the producers of knowledge. For example, there are so many conferences in London, but not so many in Algeria. So this has to do with epistemic decentering. Of course, language is a barrier. Often English-speaking countries attract more conferences, more networks. So this has to do with the key role geography plays in the consumption and production of scientific knowledge. In terms of methodology, we are interviewing 20 Turkish political science and international relations scholars and students who received visa rejections from European and North American embassies in the last 5 years. We focus on this group because we are both political scientists, so it's easier for us to get access to this demographic. We also focus on this group because academic mobility is crucial for conference attendance, ethnographic fieldwork, and networking for social scientists. We wish to interview 10 men, 10 women, interviews in person, Zoom, and phone. Actually, lots of people are sharing their stories on X, which is old Twitter, new Twitter. So we are recruiting people through that, but also through our own networks and Turkish political science associations. We received ethics approval, so we haven't conducted many interviews yet, so I cannot really share with you the results. of these interviews, but when it's over, we will apply thematic analysis to interpret our interview data. Questions asked when, how, at what intervals visa rejections occurred, what they perceive as factors contributing to hierarchies and rejections, how this affects them personally and professionally. We also ask how they respond to such injustice, what are their ways of opposing. To conclude, we argue that this increasing trend needs to be evaluated within the broader context of the rise of far-right parties and ideologies in the West. We also employ securitization literature, as you know, how ordinary citizens become securitized objects. So securitization of visa applicants from Turkey. It also has to do with tightening visa regimes in the US and, of course, in major European countries. And we also want to look into political stance against Turkey, especially some countries like Belgium, Germany, that have much higher rejection rates. Why do we see these rates from certain countries? In some, growing visa hierarchies and academic immobility worsen epistemic injustice for Turkish scholars, and this has implications for unequal power relations, which need more scholarly attention. But as I mentioned, this is still a new project, so I don't have a very developed argument yet, but yeah, I would be happy to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayca. The rejecting migrants at borders is currently very a relevant topic in international studies. We are living in times when border control is increasingly becoming a reality. When we consider the concept of world on the move, driven by the displacement of people, border control naturally results in restrictions. Thank you so much for your share. Now it's Teona, I'm sorry, Tabuashvili. I'm sorry. From Tbilisi State University, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank to the organizers because I have the opportunity to present my research in front of you. And I will talk about intra-organizational communication as a means of achieving organizational goal. And I will make a comparative analysis of state and private universities in Georgia. I am from Tbilisi, Georgia, from Tbilisi State University. Why the intra-organizational communication? As you know, when we are talking about universities, we always think about students and lecturers and the research and study. But I always have in mind that the administration of universities, this is the cycle which is combining all these tasks and which is helping students and teachers and lecturers to work with each other. So within the framework of my research, an organization will be understood as an organized association of individuals where people work independently in a highly structured and organized system to achieve common goals. And accordingly to this, communication acquires key importance in the functioning of an organization. And communication also is that means which increase an employee's involvement in the organizational life. So it is very important point in every organization and in universities also. The aim of my research was to study intra-organizational communication as a means of achieving organizational goals using a phenomenological approach. Specifically, the research focused primarily on transcendental aspects, which include describing this essence of the intra-organizational communication with a focus on epistemology, on realism. And here the research questions were: how do persons describe their experience of intra-organizational communication? To research this, I relied on 10 postulates of communication by Redding, which is the father of the organizational communication. Here, the important points are that messages can vary by perception, and meanings are not transferred, and any message is not or brings someone to act, or feedback is very important, and communication overloaded is also very hindering the smooth communication in an organization, and so on. To reach my aim, I need to answer the research questions, which were which factors determine the nature of intra-organizational communication in modern Georgian public and private universities? What role does intra-organizational communication play in the consolidation of the university community around the organization's goal? And what are the similarities and differences between intra-organizational communication in public and private universities in Georgia? As I partially already mentioned, the internal stakeholders at universities are academic staff, including invited lecturers, which number of the invited lecturers is very high in Georgia, actually, and students and administrative staff. So in my research, all these four stakeholders were interviewed. I used in-depth interviews and focus groups. I had 18 interviews with students, academic staff, invited lecturers, as I already mentioned, and 3 focus groups only with academic staff and administrative staff, one with from the state universities, another one from private universities, and one was mixed. I did not have a focus group with students because I had this in my previous research, and in that research came this problem with communication with universities from students, and that was a base for this new research. So the students thought I knew already about universities, and this time I did not have a focus group with them. 7 Georgian universities were involved, but I have the same limitation. My research is not done yet till the end. I researched only the Tbilisi universities, and I plan to go to regions, and after that to do also quantitative research. So I'm not speaking now about quantities. I'm not telling this these problems I will discuss here are very common, but these are characteristics which could I found in communication at universities. As a result for my research, there was a very significant less attention on feedbacks. I have here some phrases from my respondents. For example, one employee from a state university told that sometimes she's receiving information or task which she will just read, and then no one asks if she has done something about this information, or did she this task or not. So no one needs the result of this information. Sometimes they have unclear instructions. One male employee from private university told, "It happens sometimes that I receive a task and I'm angry because I think no one needs this information to be collected. Why should I lose so many times to do this?" And later, he saw that this was a demand from a quality assurance office, so they needed this information for something, but this coworker did not know this and was angry during this process of collecting this information that he's doing a task no one needs in actually. So sometimes they feel themselves they are not enough informed about the tasks they are doing. Yes, and sometimes happens that because of not the smooth communication, they are losing feeling of belonging to the organization they work in. For example, one female from State University told, "I never receive information when we have a new employee, but at the same time, I am the person who has to share some information to the whole staff. For example, something is happening, and I have to share this information with the whole staff. But we have a new employee which I don't know exists. So how will I put him or her in my mailing list when I don't know if he is our coworker?" Sometimes the importance of information is somehow personalized. There is no structured no structured information, so to say. So one coworker told, "I'm never receiving any information about administrative news. And once I've been reprimanded for absence from work for 1 day, and it was told, and he was told about this from 3 different sources. The assistant to the dean brought him this her this reprimanded papers, and the chancellery called her and told her, and the HR department sent an email about this. And this shocked her because she's usually never receiving this information. And when it was when something such a reprimandation occurred, at this moment she realized that it is possible to share information with employees and with coworkers. So she thought this could not be so personalized, which information people think are important and which not. This should be somehow in a structure. And sometimes the miscommunication or less communication is hindering the learning process itself. One student from State University told the schedule of lectures changed, but no one told the students. They told only the lecturer. She did not come, and the students were sitting there and waiting for this lecture, and they did not knew that she will not come. And the academic staff also told about less involvement in university's everyday life. They told about the lack of target-oriented information. For example, they are receiving emails too much sometimes, and after that they are not reading all of them, and sometimes they are missing the important ones. And for example, also the decisions from the faculty councils are not always shared with all of them. They are only uploaded on the website. And if you don't know that any new document is uploaded, why would you then enter the website and check if there's something new? So as a conclusion, I would say that Georgian or Tbilisi universities for this time are not sufficiently emphasize the fundamental role and importance of effective communication in achieving their core organizational goals. The most profound insight derived from this investigation is that the efficiency of internal communication is not primarily determined by a university's a state or private status. Instead, it is linked to the culture and character of an individual small departments and faculties. In cases where the faculties or departments worked like a family and they were very warm climate in the department, there was less problems in communication. So this was the should I click Tamam? Okay, but it does. I don't know. This implies that even with uniform institutional regulations, the actual communication practices and the perceptions of information will vary significantly at the grassroots level. This finding highlights the need for targeted interventions at the department level rather than broad institution-wide policies that may not address specific local communication deficiencies. It doesn't work here. Okay, sure. Okay. And regarding Reading's postulates, the research revealed that they are highly relevant with the Georgian university setting, but the significance of the 10th postulate from him is particularly striking as it concerns the influence of organizational climate and culture on intra-organizational communication. In the case of Georgian universities, this specific point plays crucial role for the existence of goal-oriented communication. This is a part of my bibliography, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Teona. Organizational culture is currently one of the most relevant topics. It's very important indeed, and allows us to understand how institutions achieve their goals. The comparative case of Georgia between public and private universities could be applied to all countries, namely Portugal. We are in a private university, so it could be applied to us too. So thank you. Now it's the turn of Nicola Urbino.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. At least one, I can spell one. From Vanvitelli University.
Perfect again.
Thank you. Please, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the Scientific Board, the Organizational Committee, and the moderator for the perfect presentation. And so today I'm going to talk about a topic that I think may be considered in line with all the things that we say all over these days, but from a different point of view. Because today I'm going to talk about museums in Italy and how do they interact with people, stakeholders, and with issues just like climate change or sustainable development. So what are the strategies? My presentation will be divided into three parts. A first part on the overview. I will be very smart, I promise. The first part will be on the overview of normative models for the development and of SBS. The SBS is a social report. It's a tool for which we may understand how museums interact with people, with stakeholders, with publics. The second part will be related to the SBS main goals and topics, while the third part will be related to green policies in SBS Italian leading museums. That's the core of the presentation, and that's why I'm here today, because I would like to show you how some of the most important museums in Italy interact and deal with some of the most important topics of today. So, what's a social balance sheet? So, a social report. According to the Italian law number 4 of 2019, social balance sheet may be defined as a tool for reporting on the responsibilities, behaviors, and social, environmental, and economic results of activities carried out by an organization in order to offer structured and timely information to all stakeholders. In fact, the sentence, the reporting of social, environmental, and economic behavior and results can be summarized using the Anglo-Saxon term of accountability. And this quote encompasses all the presupposes, in addition to concepts of responsibility, those of transparency and compliance. So just to wrap it up, the SBS is a tool through which we may communicate not only on the core business of the museum itself, but even regarding all the activities led by the museum. In Italy, who's going to draft a social balance sheet? The non-profit entities with the revenues or income exceeding 1 million euros, the voluntary service and centers, and the social enterprises, including social cooperatives and groups of social enterprises. So it's clear that museums may be included in these three categories. Just to give a perfect overview on the topic, so a social balance sheet needs to provide more than purely economic and financial information. That's what I talked before, and the possibility given to stakeholders through the social report to know the value generated by the organization. So what not only the economic value, but even the social value. And in fact, through the SBS, we may provide all stakeholders with an overview of the activities, their nature, the results of the institutions, foster participatory process both internal and external in the organization, provide useful information on the quality of entities' activities to broaden and improve the knowledge and possibilities of stakeholder assessment and choice, provide information on balance between expectation of stakeholders and indicate the commitments made to them, and provide information on the interaction between the entity and the environment in which it operates. So according to our national guidelines, what we have to include in an SBS when it comes to museum, obviously we're going to see that there are types of environmental impact related to the activities carried out, and it's something that we're going to see in the next few minutes. Moreover, policies and methods for managing the impacts of museums' activities, so try to have the KPI on that. And even the environmental impact indicators, as I told before, consumption of energy, for example, and raw materials and waste production. I think this is very, very important, this specific topic, because it's a way through which a museum may assess its own impact on the territory and on the local districts. And a benchmark, so the variation of the values assumed by the institutions and a trend all over the years about the specific this specific topic. So this very smart part, it's a panoramic overview on the legal framework and on the framework about social trends and the SBS or the way museums interact with this specific topic. Probably the more interesting part is the one related to the activities led by some of the most important museums. And the main goal of this part of the presentation is to try to understand the difference between different museums in terms of strategies when it comes to deal with this specific topic. So, for example, the MAN, it's the National Archaeological Museum of Naples. The activities led by MAN are led through, for example, exhibitions or publication. In fact, for example, one of the most interesting activities led by MAN is the Maurizio Finotto's Archaeology by the Beach exhibition. That's an intervention reflecting on the relationship between archaeological finds and beaches and the plastic waste that infest the seas on a daily basis. And in fact, in the exhibition area, MAN sets as its primary goal new forms of communication to convey a message to users and visitors through the presence of projects with a high educational and training impact. So, first example, we have archaeological museums that deal with this specific topic through training impact, educational and training impact, or exhibitions or publication. So, it's a first step. One step ahead, Leonardo da Vinci Museum, it's a national museum for science and technology in Italy, in Milan. we have one step further. So their activities involve, for example, training courses led by the museum itself, and which involved 345 children in just 1 year, 16 teachers and 14 classes, in order to contribute to development, to the critical thinking and awareness. So we have here a one step behind, one step further in terms of impact, because we're talking about training program that are related to activities for schools and universities and people of the community in which the museums belong to. Or, for example, some researches, just like the one presented during the Milano Green Week, that's the climate and environmental migration that's a project called Le Rotte del Clima, and that's a study promoted by a study center focused on the monitoring of various ecosystems and their evolution. The third case, it's the Egyptian Museums of Turin. Probably this is one of the most interesting cases in terms of way through which museums interact with this specific topic, because the Egyptian Museums of Turin is the first Italian museums, and I will say it's even the just one museums in Italy that this specific activity that has an office environmental management. So an office related to the waste production and the management of the consumption and the analysis of the consumption. In fact, according to their studies, between 2021 and 2022, museums increased, for example, the electricity consumption by 21% and water consumption by 25%, while thermal consumption decreased by 22%. These are all data that may be gained just through an analysis, a specific analysis on the activities led by the museum itself. And moreover, they have a specific clue on what they produced and what they do all over the year. In fact, in just 1 year, they analyzed and monitored that museums produced more than 4,000 kilograms of plastic, more than 5,000 special waste, more than 6,000 of glass, more than 50,000 paper cartoon, and more than 31,000 kilograms, we're talking about kilograms, undifferentiated waste. Last case is the MUSE, the Science Museum of Trento, and this is probably total different beast when it comes to the way museums may interact with social change or climate change or sustainable development, because all the cases that we have seen right now deal with this specific topic, even without they have that in their core mission, their own mission. While when it comes to the Museum of Trento, museum's vision itself is structured on the basis of clear goals, such as investigating nature, sharing science, inspiring society for sustainable development. So in this case, the museum is no longer concerned with the mere scientific research. Their own goal is not the protection of the collection, for example, but their own goal is to protect the nature and to foster the sustainable development and to interact with people and publics of their own territory. In fact, this is just one example. We have one project that is the Life Wolf Alps EU. That's a project related to the training courses in which that involve the way through people interact with wolves on the Alps. And it's interesting because part of the training program is related to the people, the same people of the territory that are pillars themselves of the project. So it's a 5-year project with more than 19 organizations or institutions that work to support the coexistence of people and wolves on the Alps. And as I told you before, it's really interesting because this specific part, because the people itself are part of the process. So the museum is a pillar of the activities, but even the people of the territory and all the stakeholders are involved in order to enhance, to foster sustainability, and to share awareness on this specific topic. So just to wrap it up, as you may see, when it comes to museums, the very first mission of the museums is to collect and is to protect their own collection and to share and to valorize the collection. But we have even different steps. So a museum has its own mission, a specific mission to interact with people, to foster awareness, and to show how they may have an impact on the territory and on stakeholders, and they do this in very different ways. So when it comes to an archaeological museums, they will have a very light strategy on that, so just exhibitions or publication. And then we have other steps, just like training programs or just like simple projects or the analysis of consumption and raw materials. And we have this project that the museums is the center of an entire community, and share the knowledge and share the activities and have a real impact on the territories, on the stakeholders, and so on. So I would really like to thank you all for the attention, and I always like to leave here my contacts, because when it comes to specific topic, it's a very wide sector. So it would be interesting, probably, me to interact or me to share some thoughts on that or share some projects on that. So that would be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. The topic of the social and the environmental impacts of museums is very interesting. I guess I have heard you before.
Yes.
In the last year, no?
Here in CESRAN?
Yes, in Venice, no?
No.
Oh,
I was invited, but I was not
okay.
there.
Because this is a very interesting topic indeed, especially when we consider the growth of tourism and the visits worldwide. And Italy is, in fact, one of the most traditional destinations and the impacts of tourism in all the cities and all the communities are, in fact, significant. So thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if Giuliano Bifolchi is with us in the room. No. So we had the privilege to hear three very relevant but very different presentations of great scientific interests. Now I'd like to open the floor to our audience for comments, which I ask you to be brief, to have the response. And I ask you to introduce yourself, just to know each other, indicating your name and institution, please.
Thank you very much for your presentations. All of them were very interesting and very relevant. I wish to see such kind of management of museums in my country. In Georgia. Sorry, I'm Iyayashvili from Georgia, Tbilisi State University, and I wish to see the kind of the same management at museums in my country at Tbilisi State University, because I consider that it is extremely important. What we see mainly, these museums are like static units, but I think that, and I absolutely agree with you that they should be interactive. They should appear as centers of alternative centers of education. and to be more actively involved to the local community, and to be engaged with school students or higher education university students, and with population in general. Actually, that's fine. My questions refer, actually I have two questions. The first question refers to Ayca, and the next to Teona. Ayca, you mentioned in your research, that is very interesting, that you are in the process of the research. This project is in the process of the research, and you are not on the stage to speak about the results of your research. However, I'm really wondering, what is your hypothesis? What is the main reason for visa rejections to Turkey citizens and scholars? Particularly, something should be in your mind. Maybe it is a political issue or something. You know better. Anyway, you know better. Okay. And my next question is to Teona, and your research is very interesting as well. I'm really curious if you find any differences between communication or responsibility between staff, between private and state universities in Georgia. You mentioned in your talk that it is mostly due to traditions or like values that the Georgian society carries. But anyway, did you find any differences in this case between private and state universities? Thank you.
Okay, go to another one, and then.
Thank you. Taner Zorbay from Middle East Technical University, Ankara. And my question will be to Ayca and Nicola. In your case, the visa rejections issue, could you or are you planning to also evaluate the scholars that non-European or non-Western scholars living in the what you call within the Western countries? Because sometimes they also face similar things, not that often, but I have colleagues and friends living in the West, but faces rejections, or they are given length of time and then get visa rejections, something. Maybe that will be an angle. To Nicola, I'm from history department, so is your research including like the cooperation between museums? For instance, Italy or such countries are experienced in having perfect and what you call detailed museums or museum management. And also, do you have, or do the Italian museums have such cooperative plans or projects with museums in Turkey or museums around the world? What I mean is not only presenting something, but protection and preserving of the things also needs to be experience exchange or knowledge exchange. Thank you.
Another one, and then they respond.
Thank you all the presenters for very, very interesting presentations. I have just one maybe question, maybe comment for Nicola. So can we speak about the different policies of the states towards entry to the museums and fee, about the fee of the museums for the entry? For example, in Britain, the state museums are free and everyone can enter here there without paying any money. And what about the Italy and the European countries? I just wonder what's the policy about holders of ICOM card, if you know, it's I guess that everyone knows about it. ICOM cards are the museum cards for museum workers, and it's very powerful card, international card. For example, in France and in Germany, the doors are open for the ICOM card holders, and if you show, for example, in Louvre or say the Museum or Dresden Museum, if you show that you are only this card shows this card, ICOM card, the doors are open and no one asks you who are you, where are you from, what's your name, why are you, and they are not demanding you to show the passport or identity card, and everyone is very, very happy that they are someone which is holders this card. But in Italy, it's absolutely different politics. Maybe you know about this because while having this card, you have to stay in the row still, and you have to stay in a very, very, very long row. For example, in Uffizi, in Vatican, and so and so. And coming at the entrance, you will show identity card or passport. What's the reason of such different policies? Because, for example, once again, in France, everything is open. Oh, please come here, you are an icon holder. But in Italy, it's not so. It's quite the same. Thanks a lot.
I don't know who's going to start. I think this should be start her.
You may start
Yes.
by Ayca.
All right. Thank you so much for both questions. Yeah, that's a difficult one because we still don't have the interview results. But in terms of hypothesis, because we are looking at the last 5 years, I think we would like to link it to increasing Islamophobia and the rise of far right in both the US, Trump presidency, and as you know, in Europe, far right parties are gaining foothold in almost every country, like Germany, for example. When you look at AfD's success in the last 5 years, I think that will be one angle we might explore. Also, I think it also has to do with worsening Turkey-EU relations. When you look at early 2000s, the EU saw Turkey's entry into EU as a more likely scenario, but in recent years, they really turned away from Turkey, and other countries like Ukraine, for example, has gained more focus as more likely candidates. So I think we will also explore foreign relations, bilateral and multilateral relations. But yeah, I'm still not sure what our hypothesis is. But thank you for encouraging me to start thinking about it. I think that's a really great question, including non-Western scholar experiences living in the West and whether they go through similar challenges. Yeah, actually, I'm one of those scholars living in the West, but still going through, those kinds of visa challenges. For example, I live in Wellington. To apply for a Canadian visa to attend a Canadian conference 2 years ago, I had to travel to Auckland, book a hotel, cover flight costs. And the treatment is often very humiliating. You have to collect so many documents. And my Iranian friends are also going through something similar. So I think it could be a really nice follow-up project, maybe to show that non-Western scholars living in the West are not an exception and there's not much difference. I think another interesting follow-up project would be also to include other colleagues from, let's say, Africa. I was reading how Nigerian scholars are also receiving visa rejections at a heightened rate. So do Algerian scholars. So I think it will be quite interesting as a follow-up project to compare experiences of Turkish scholars to, let's say, Iranian or African scholars. So thank you so much for the idea.
Thank you for your question. Well, on the stage of characteristics of the communication in universities, I would say that there were no significant differences. That's why I told that the culture and climate at the departments depends. I did not mean the Georgian culture or our not responsibilities for feedbacks. I meant the climate inside the departments, which was the significant moment in my research, because also at the private universities, one student told me that she needed a question, an answer about an urgent question about exams, but she somehow could not have the answer on email. So this miscommunication or less of communication occurs everywhere, and that's why I told that I'm not talking about frequencies, but these problems occurred in both types of universities. When I will do the quantitative research, maybe then I will tell that it's more common for state universities, and it is also understandable. The private universities are way smaller, with less students, less co-workers, and of course, in this case, communication is easier than at the universities such as Georgian Technical University or Tbilisi State University. They are enormous. So, of course, this communication is smoother, but it doesn't mean that there are not these problems about I talked. Okay, thank you.
That's my turn. Thanks for the questions. I will say that the first one related to the cooperation, if I get it right, between Italian museums and other museums in terms of strategies when it comes to social change or environmental impact. I will say that that will be good to have some types of cooperation between national museums in Italy and in other countries, just like Turkey. But at the same time, it's a little bit difficult because everything that I showed you before, it's just a glimpse of some of the strategies of Italian museums. But I may say that in Italy, we have more than 5,000 museums, and we just probably the 0.5% of them have social strategies when it comes to sustainable development, analysis of the consumption, and so on. So these are the strategies of leading museums, but in Italy we have a low level of awareness in terms of strategy. So the first step should be to raise our level in terms of awareness, and then try to cooperate with the other nations or other countries or other museums all over the world. So as I told you before, it's just the maximum level from just 4 museums in Italy, but as I told, the level is very low on that, and probably we should try to set the bar at a higher level when it comes to standards. In Italy, we have a law related to the minimum standards that museums should have in order to be considered museum, and probably the 90% of museums it's lower that standard. So that's a real issue right now. Thank you. And that's what I told you right. What told him right now. It's connected with all you asked before, because Econ card works even in Italy, of course, and with the Econ card you can enter free in every kind of museums. But the problem that we don't have structure. So we don't have people inside the museum. So the level of awareness about some tools, just like the Econ card, it's very low. So they ask you your ID, your passport. It's everything. It's so complicated when it comes to the big museums, because there are a lot of people. Uffizi has probably more than 2 million visitors per year. So it's difficult for them to manage that crowd and all the publics, all the kind of publics, and there are a very, very short number of people that work inside the museum. So it's the problem comes when we talk about structure. We have a low structure in terms of museums and organization. That's the real problem.
Just one idea that came to my mind. I think an interesting case study to look at as a success story is New Zealand in terms of environmental consciousness and ecological sustainability, and also interaction with indigenous communities and incorporation of local culture. I know it's a bit of a far-fetched example because New Zealand doesn't have that many museums and doesn't accept that many visitors, but especially there's one museum, which is the National Museum called Te Papa, which has received some international awards in this regard. So maybe it could be an interesting museum example for you to look at. But as I said, it's not comparable to Italy in terms of being a tourism destination. But yeah.
Yes, thank you for the suggestion. The fact is that the context affects the way museum interact with the local culture and the local stakeholders. So it's all about the story, the context in which museums belong to, the territory, the stakeholders. So it's all different. But I think that it's always interesting, as you told us before, to share some thoughts, some strategies, and try to understand what it works in a specific context. That's it.
May we go to another slot of questions if you have? No more questions. Everything more or less is clear. Well, so I would like to ask you just a question to each. Okay, to Ayca, the topic of migration is of particular interest to me, as I have been studying the process in general, but also from a perspective of motivational and contextual factors, such as environmental factors. So, given that migration is here to stay, what measures would you highlight to alleviate the constraints of visa refusals? To Teona, you answered partly to my question, but what kind of recommendations do you consider to promote more effective organizational communication and culture? And to Nicola, bearing in mind the various examples that you gave us, I'd like to ask you whether from global perspective, the Italian government plans to adopt measures to regulate museums that guarantee the achievement of the sustainability objectives, goals. Okay.
So what measures can be introduced to alleviate visa rejections is a really good one. And maybe actually we could include this in our conclusion as some policy suggestions. So thank you for the inspiration. I think the first measure should be open communication. I think that's the one that really angers applicants. For example, when Germany just ended appeals a couple of days ago, imagine you have all the right documents and you get a rejection, let's say after spending hundreds of euros on the application, travel costs, all kinds of other challenges, and then they don't even give you a reason, and you cannot even ask what's the reason. It's so humiliating. So I think one measure should be insisting on transparency and open communication. And Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs was also paying attention to this issue, and he announced that if this continues, because it's so unfair, there needs to be some political punishment imposed on these countries. It could be, for example, withdrawal of some, not withdrawal, but at least, suspension, withdrawal of doing the same to those countries' citizens. So I think another measure could be political, in a way, tit for tat kind of humiliation. I don't know, of course, if this makes sense in international diplomacy, but I think the situation is so worse and it's getting worse that some measures need to be included. But yeah, great question. Thank you.
Well, about recommendations. I think the main problem is that the management of the universities itself, they are not acknowledge the importance of the communication between administrative staff, or for me, the most important part in this communication is the information which flows from the side of administration to academic staff, to students, and to between itself the administrative staff. I think they need to acknowledge that this is also important, such as planning exams or making schedule of lectures, because in working process, in thinking about students and lectures and projects, research projects, there are some this communication, or I would say administrative side of this management is somehow left behind the interest. And when they will see at the first step and then say that we need somehow structured or strategy for communication or structured communication, then I think these problems will occur less.
Thank you for your question. About how the Italian government may try to set a bar and the standards for museums. That's right, if I get it right. The real problem that we tried to do that. So, as the Culture Ministry in the 2018 set the law for the minimum standards, as I told even before, but that didn't work, because the real problem, it's a characteristic of Italian museums that there's a lot of difference between all of them. So in Italy, we have, for example, the 5% of museums that are very, very big. So big structure, for example, I don't know, the Uffizi or the museums, the archaeological museums on Naples. But probably more than 90% of museums are very small museums with no people that work inside or volunteers. Very small collection. So it's very, very difficult for the government to try to have standards that are valid for every kind of museum. So that's the real problem with that, and that affects even the parts related to the social changes and how they interact with sustainable development. That's it.
It's the museum itself.
Yes.
So you have 5,000 museums in one big museum.
They always say that Italy itself is a big museums, and that's it. And probably according to our ministry, we have 5,000 museums, but probably we have more than that. In fact, my university, it's Vanvitelli University, and we have a project. We have an observatory on national museums that analyze the performance and services of museums in the Campania region. So it's just a local district in Campania. According to our ministry, we have 200 museums. According to our researches, we have 450 museums. And that affects all the regions. So probably the real numbers of museums in Italy are higher than the official one. Yeah, the definition of museum, it's really difficult, because a museum should have a collection, of course, but should have people that work inside. So that should have a mission, should have some critical documentation, but sometimes even the most important museums don't have these specific services or these specific items. So are they museums or not? That's a real question, and it's very, very difficult to set standards for everyone, because even the definition itself of a museum is difficult when it comes to national standards, local standards. So it's really, really difficult about that.
Thank you. Mel. As you may see, life is a challenge, and we have three studies that are challenging and have challenges to them. So I guess we may follow your work in the future. So thank you very much to all. It's a pleasure to learn with you. Thank you.